Hi, and welcome to the Metamorphosis podcast. I am your host, Mike Elliott, and I'm so passionate about exploring this topic, this terrain of self-realization. And how do we do that? How do we become more of our virtue? How do we shed these shadowy places of ourselves, these beliefs that we adopt from not being loved or received or acknowledged or appreciated in the ways that we really did need growing up? How do we shed all those beliefs and actually become who we're meant to be? You know, all of these gifts that we've been given from life, from God, whatever, however you want to look at it. How do we awaken more of that? How do we embody more of that? And this is what this show is all about. So today I wanted to dive deeper into this topic of our inner circle or our peers or there's language in, the people that I connect with. We call each other soul family. Like, why is it so important to be mindful of the people we spend our time with? Wanted to dive deeper into this because recently I put a reel up on Instagram and there was a lot of engagement. There's a lot of comments. There was a lot of saves. I think it was the most saves I've had on any of my posts. And I was like, okay, this is really touching home for a lot of people. And it's one that took me a long time to figure out. See, I want to talk about the reason why it's so important to be around um, people that build us up and encourage us and inspire us. And I also want to talk about the other side of, like, if we're not mindful of the people we're spending our time with, like, what does that look like? You know, where I felt like I learned the importance of this the most was when I entered in the construction industry. So my background, when I go back to being a teenager, I think I was about 15 and I started apprenticing with my brother-in-law. I'll share a bit of a story here. And he was a plumber. And so I would be his little psychic and I'd go on all these jobs with him and I started to learn that. Then I got kicked out of my house on the day of graduation. I was a lifeguard at the time and I needed to to move towards some sort of career. Being a lifeguard, the max wage was like 18 bucks an hour at the time. I was like, this isn't what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I have to find a career. And so I knew plumbing. That's what I had done with my brother-in-law. From 15 to this point, I would have been 18 by the time I got kicked out. So I had some background. And, when I looked at trades, it seemed to make sense based off of the messaging that I received from the outside world. And this is what's so important. Kind of want to slow this part down because the people that I was around, based off of my upbringing in the school that I went to, the message that I received was I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't an academic. I wasn't going to university. I love actually so much appreciation from the person who told me this. It's actually my football coach. He's the reason I actually graduated high school. He's a beautiful man. And from his perspective, he just looked at my grades. Like, I just barely passed all of my grades for as long as I could remember, like all the way through school, it was like 50, unless it was math, biology, or gym. I excelled in all of those. And so by the time I was like close to graduation, I remember my coach at this time, my football coach, had said, my vice principal, he had said, Mike, like, this is why he wanted to help me graduate. He looked at all my grades. Things weren't going well with one of my teachers. I was really close to being expelled for some behavioral reasons. starting to have big outbursts and lots of rage. And an incident happened, and he kind of sat me down and he said, Mike, I'm gonna help you out here. Let's bring in all of your lifeguarding credits. And he really put together all of the data that was needed for me to graduate. And he also said something, and that was, Mike, we both know that you're not going to university, you're not going to college, you're going to be in some sort of trade. At this time, he had created a course that was just for Mike to stay out of trouble, and that was fixing the teachers' cars. We didn't have a shop program, but he created that because I was starting to have a lot of problems in some of the classes that I was in. So he gave me something to do, and I got credits for it. And he saw this part of me that I'm really good with my hands. I am very mechanical. And it's something that I really value and appreciate about myself. And a message that I adopted from this interaction, because there was love and trust, was, Mike, you're not an academic. You're not going to college or university. You're just going to be a trades guy. I'd say he was one of the elders, like the adults in my life that I really trusted. And he didn't do anything wrong. Like, from his lens, it was, that's actually a pretty probable outcome in truth. But it's also really disempowering because I was in such a vulnerable place in my life that I adopted his idea of my future. And so what I did was, instead of getting curious of like, what do I want to do? Who do I want to become? And leaning into someone who like could reflect back to me, like, let's get curious on your gifts and how does that feel? And I didn't have any guidance. I was just, really struggling at, with this whole theme of this podcast is self-realizing. Like, I needed more accurate reflections of what my gifts were. I felt like a lot of messages I got back of how I was a burden, how I was a problem, that I was an idiot, wasn't good in school, I couldn't pay attention. Just all these things that weren't very inspiring. I didn't feel empowered. I was just like, fuck, I didn't feel loved and received and celebrated. So I started to have these outbursts, which a lot of teenagers do. And then I get this message of like, you're just going to be a trades guy. So I was like, well, if this is all I'm going to be, I may as well go all out into it. And so, I signed up, I got, the registration papers, and I became a plumber. Then I joined and became a part of the construction industry. And holy shit, with the consciousness I have now looking back, it was, there were beautiful parts of it. There was lots of camaraderie. There was some kindness. I think of some of my journeymen, and there were some kind guys. There were some guys that did take me under their wing, and they showed me a lot, and they taught me a lot, and I'll be forever grateful. And the general atmosphere of the trades world was quite toxic. I call this is the realm of toxic masculinity. The way of humor in relating was by putting each other down and shaming each other. Like, you're a fucking idiot, and you're a numpty, and you're a pussy, and what do you do? Like, just lots of, but then laughing. And it was really confusing for me because I'm like, why? Like, when I look back, I'm like, why was I laughing? That's not funny. I was actually just engaging in accepting this abusive relationship. It's like, this isn't ever helpful to be talked to this way. And then I would also talk back in that way and put others down. And when I look back, it's like, oh, it's a lot of embarrassment and remorse for how I treated other men. But it's also all I knew. And this is the culture that I accepted to be a part of. And this is really important. A lot of us are in environments where we feel victim to how people are speaking to us, treating us. This is really common in any work environment. I hear a lot of people that I end up working with, or people that I've known in the past, my own journey of being an employee, where I'm not really spoken to in a respectful way, where I'm treated as a peon, somebody who's just there to do a service, and I better do it in the way they see fit, in the way that they want me to do it. I'm not allowed to bring any of my inspirations. They're not really appreciated or valued. And it's really deflating. Like I remember feeling like my soul withering, but wanting to do the best job, but then I could just never get ahead because I was always just feeling shitty about myself. Some of the conversations that I would hear around me, how I would hear people speaking about clients or customers or about other employees. I'm like, this just doesn't feel good. This isn't a healthy environment to become something great. Like when I look back, oh, I would have, walked into that environment and grabbed me by the hand and be like, dude, you can do so much better than this, and don't learn this way of relating. Don't relate with people in this way. This isn't helpful. And like eventually I found what was true for me. I found my own nature, and I started to what I my swing, my adaptation in this environment was I just pulled away. I like went really deep inside myself. I became really avoidant. I didn't really connect with anyone, and I just stayed in my own world and I did my own job. And that worked for a while until it didn't. I was just alone. I felt so alone. I felt so scared inside, insecure, confused. I'm like, I don't know what to do here. Now I feel bad. There's this double bind that I was in. I want to relate with people, but then I'm also not appreciating how the relationship is happening or the relating or the communication. So it's like, fuck, what do I do? So eventually, thank God, I started to just move into new environments, and I got a different job. I'm like, okay, this feels a little better, but it's also still really toxic. Damn it, what do I do? Until the awakening moment. I remember it was actually right around, it was just after COVID. And I was in a business meeting, and the start of this Zoom call, because we were all working from home at this time, the start of the Zoom call um, was a few of the men started just complaining about another person. And I remember as I was listening to this complaining, I'm like, I'm done. I am done with accepting this environment for myself. I'm not going to witness or participate or listen to this. I don't have control of what they say or do, but this isn't a way that I'm going to live my life anymore. I ended up leaving the job. And I ended up moving to where I live now, and that's in the Kootenays, the Nelson area in British Columbia. And what I immediately learned by landing here was how important it is to be surrounded by the people that resonate to what's true for me. So for me, I spent, 13 years in Fort McMurray, Alberta. And that environment was not like I found joy and happiness there. I realized a lot of myself there. I healed my relationship to money and finance. And, I had like maybe two soul friends that I'm still connected with. And, but there wasn't a lot of abundance. And where I live now, it was like I felt like I immediately landed somewhere where I felt seen, heard, and understood, where what I brought um, mirrored value. It was such a confusing place for me when I first landed here. It was like almost within the first week, I went to a community gathering. We were, singing songs and dancing. It was things I had dreamt of for like 10 years. I wanted to be a part of a community. I wanted to be in this place where it was normal to hug each other, where it was okay to tell other men that you loved them and to want to support and to, just help and be a part of and be regularly connected to community and want to build each other up and reflect back these gifts that we experience from each other and also challenge each other when there's these shadowy pieces of like, hey, is it okay that I share? There might be a blind spot there. Like, have you looked at this or noticed this pattern? These are the relationships I really wanted to be a part of. And in this first like couple weeks of being in that type of relationship, my heart almost exploded. I felt the most me I had ever felt. 15, 20 people seeing me for me, like appreciating how open I am and how I just wanted to hug everyone and like just be so excited for this new experience we're all having. It was new for me to be a part of and to be included. I was so grateful and loved that we just got to play and laugh and be silly, and it felt so nourishing. I remember that one first community experience together. There's a part where we were kind of all sitting in a circle and just like, I remember looking around being like, wow, this is what life can be. I can choose the people that I'm around. And the more I choose and discern the people who are around me, the more I'm going to learn and discover about myself, the parts that I'm wanting to discover more of. See, I know the dark side. I've been in those environments that point out all of my flaws as a human being. Thanks, everyone. Like, I'm still grateful. It's good to know. Yeah, I'm flawed. Yes, I make mistakes. Yes, I create hurt. I want to know those things. And, you know, a way that I really like to look at this of like 10% of that part, 10% of the criticism, the shadow, and the rest I want of positivity and reassurance and affirmation and validation for myself. So I need to be in an environment where that's available to me also. I want to be in a relationship where I can openly share my heart with someone and tell them what's true for me and tell them, shower them with gold and these, traits that I experience in them that's just so helpful for me. And like that's what I live for. And what I've noticed is being in relationships where somebody is able to receive what I want to give them or offer. God, it's just there's so much reciprocity in that connection. It's like then what I notice is like then I end up, it's not that I am doing that to receive anything, but then I end up receiving reflections and affirmation of gifts that I hold, that I'm learning about myself. And the more I have it reflected from the outside, the easier it is for me to believe of like, oh, if people value my voice, maybe this whole belief around my voice is a problem and I should shut up. And um, it's an issue if I'm taking up space. Like, these are some of the messages I got growing up. It's got what I got from home. That's what I got from school is like, just shut up, like, shut up, fill your yap. Um, a phrase that I used to hear at the dinner table. And like, but it's part of my dharma to speak. This is why I have two podcasts. Like, this is part of my dharma. I'm meant to speak. And it's incredible to then be in an environment where that is actually appreciated and asked of. Like, hey, share more about that. Tell me another story. Oh my God, like I love listening to the sound of your voice or whatever it is. It's like, oh my God, I'm being welcomed for the gifts that I've been given. Oh, like then I get to give more of what I've been given that is supporting other people. And this is really what I feel is the very root of importance, to be mindful of the people we surround ourselves with. Because the more we are in a healthy environment where we can reflect to each other what's true or what's noticed, we can decide to take that information in and self realize we can become something. We need outside reflection to really believe and know who we are. It's a human need. And the more we can allow that in for ourselves, it's like it brings in more self-confidence, it brings in more self-esteem, it brings in, it brings in this belief of like, I matter, I belong here, I'm valuable, I'm worthy, I'm loved, I'm cared for, I'm a kind person, whatever it is. And then, from that place, that just fills the cup. The more our cup is filled, the more we can believe that that's true. And then from the overflow, we can also share and reflect that back when we see it in others. But if we're in a toxic environment, we're always in defense. We're putting up walls and trying to numb parts of ourselves out because it's like, God, it's too painful to show up in this if we're being put down and shamed and all these things. So the people we surround ourselves are going to be allies for us to become our highest potential. This is how we become the virtue of ourselves. And every one of us has a different outcome, has a different role in this life. And everyone gets to discover what that is. You know, it's not me, it's not up to me to tell you what that is. And it's not up to anyone else to tell you what that is. And people can reflect back maybe some clues or hints of what that could be. And what's really fun about that is when it's done in a safe, healthy relationship, we can consider those reflections that are actually coming from a place of love, coming from someone's own intuition and guidance. We can try that on, maybe play with it a little bit and be like, oh, that does really feel true. Oh, yeah, I'm going to bring more of that to the world and see what happens. And the more we get to do that, the more fulfilled we're going to be, the more loved and accepted we're going to be, the more available we're going to be in relationship. See, this is where, emotional intelligence comes from, is choosing to be around healthy relationships where we are respected and appreciated for who we are. All of us, our whole human experience. And the more we are basking in that, the more valuable we become to all of the relationships we're a part of. This is what I've found is like me choosing the people that I relate with helps me become a more confident self, helps me be more emotionally integrated, be able, then I can trust the emotions that I feel of like when anger comes in, it's like, oh, anger's boundary. Ooh, I have a boundary there. Let's be curious about that. Is there something for me to learn? Or am I wanting space? And is that like, whoa, that's an old part of my life? Hey, that trait there of like shaming or blaming, like I just a big no. Like, it's not something I'm willing to engage with. The more I have those boundaries and create space for who I'm becoming, the more I can offer, where I notice it the most is the more I can offer my partner, Courtney, the more I can offer my son, Cedar, the more I can offer my family unit. And then the more I can offer that, these accurate reflections in love and safety and provide health in the environment, the better the whole unit does. The happier my partner is, and the happier my son is, and the happier I am. We're like a happy unit. And the happier our whole unit is, the more magnetic we are, and the more we'll attract other healthy units and people who also want to be in love and respecting each other and play and, you know, all these kinds of things. And so choosing the people we spend our time with is going to determine who we become ultimately. And so I wanted to share this because I feel like there's a lot of people who, are in these work environments or in relationships where it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good how you're being treated, but you're still there. I want to let you know that you can go. You don't have to stay there. You're not a little kid anymore, and mom and dad are gone, or whoever it was that sent those messages of, you know, undervalued, underappreciated, whatever it was that's just so painful and maybe is believed inside. They're gone. And I'm so sorry for the hurt that's happened there. And you can choose something different now. And it's really important that you do. You know, I don't want to tell you what to do, but I want you to strongly consider and maybe try out this idea that maybe you need to choose to be around different people. If you're not feeling good about yourself, and if you like start to be curious and ask questions of like, how am I spoken to? Do I know what my gifts are? Is that reflected where I work? If it's not, please consider going somewhere else. Try, going to events or experiences, retreats or seminars, or, the more people, the better, because then you can kind of, I remember going to a date with Destiny with Tony Robbins, and there's 5,000 people in that place. You know how many people I got to like experiment with of like, who do I like to relate with? What kind of conversations do I like to have? Whoa, this person really likes me. Wow, that feels nice. What are they reflecting? Oh, yeah, I didn't even know that about me. These events are such a good place to start realizing ourselves, especially if what we're so used to is just receiving all the messages that are keeping us stuck. See, it's not just because you're not doing the right things that you're stuck, it's the environment you're allowing yourself to baste in. Go to a different environment, try something new. Just pay attention to the reflections that come in that are different. Then you'll start to notice how important this message is. And then the more you advocate for yourself and bring these boundaries in of like, I am not accepting this way of being treated or these conversations, that's where you can actually start creating the life of your dreams, because you're choosing your environment. You're choosing the nutrients that come in for your soul and development. You're choosing the people who can help you heal those parts that have just hurt for such a long time. And you're also choosing the people, who could advocate for who you're becoming and hold you accountable. That's a whole new experience of life. It's the one we're all meant to experience as little ones growing up from our parents. And we're in a traumatized planet. And we don't all get that. And so now it's time to create that for ourselves. So thank you guys all and gals, whoever's listening. Thank you for tuning in to this topic of this environment we get to experience, these people we spend our time with. I really encourage you to attract new people if you don't feel good in the relationships that you're in, so that you can start to feel and get to know who you truly are. You really deserve that. Thank you all for listening. Until next time.